The dawn broke quietly over the narrow streets of the city, the kind of dawn that did not announce itself with color or warmth, but crept in softly, as if afraid to disturb the fragile lives sleeping beneath broken roofs. In a small rented house at the edge of the city, Abdul Rahman sat on the floor with his back against the wall, counting coins spread out on a worn piece of cloth. The coins were dull, scratched, and few, far too few for a man with 3 children and a heart full of promises. He sighed, not loudly, not in frustration, but in resignation. Inside the single room, his children slept close together on a thin mattress. Ayan, the eldest at 10, lay curled protectively around his younger sisters, Hira and Zoya. Their clothes were old but clean, washed carefully by their father every night. Abdul Rahman often watched them sleep, memorizing their faces as if afraid the world might steal them away while he wasn't looking. Their mother had died 2 years earlier after a short illness, an illness that came suddenly and left just as quickly, taking with it the light of their home. Since that day, Abdul Rahman had become both father and mother, strength and softness, provider and protector. He never complained, not once. Even when hunger gnawed at his stomach, he made sure the children ate first. That morning, he folded the cloth with the coins and placed it gently in his pocket. He stood up, careful not to wake the children. Before leaving, he knelt beside them and whispered a prayer. Ya Allah, he murmured, his voice trembling, keep them safe. Give me strength to earn halal rizq for them. Take my pain, but don't give it to them. He kissed each child on the forehead and stepped outside. The job he had found was far from home, construction work at a site across the city. It was not permanent, but it paid enough to buy food, school notebooks, and sometimes even milk. Abdul Rahman had never been afraid of hard work. He had worked as a laborer since his youth, his hands rough, his back bent, but his dignity intact. That day, he chose to travel by motorcycle with a fellow worker to save money. The road was crowded, chaotic, and impatient, horns blaring, buses swerving, trucks roaring past like monsters with no mercy. Abdul Rahman clutched his small bag tightly and stared ahead, silently reciting verses from the Quran. He never saw the truck coming. The sound came first, a deafening crash, then the world spun violently. Metal screamed against metal. The motorcycle skidded, twisted, and threw Abdul Rahman into the air like a broken doll. Pain exploded through his body as he hit the ground. His right leg was trapped beneath the motorcycle, crushed, bleeding, unnatural. People gathered. Someone shouted. Someone prayed. Someone called an ambulance. Abdul Rahman's vision blurred. His last conscious thought was not of pain, not of fear, but of his children. Ya Allah, my children, he whispered before darkness swallowed him whole. He woke up in a hospital bed, surrounded by white walls and the sharp smell of medicine. His body felt heavy, distant, as if it no longer belonged to him. When he tried to move, pain screamed through him, raw and unbearable. A doctor stood near the bed, his face serious. You were in a severe accident, the doctor said gently. Your leg, it was badly damaged. We did everything we could. Abdul Rahman slowly lifted his head and looked down. His leg was wrapped in thick bandages, suspended, motionless. How long? He whispered. The doctor hesitated. You will need multiple surgeries. 32 stitches were required just to close the wounds. Recovery will be long, very long. How long until I can work? Abdul Rahman asked, his voice barely audible. The doctor looked away. Months, maybe years. And even then, there may be permanent damage. The words hit harder than the accident itself. Years. Abdul Rahman closed his eyes. Tears slipped silently into the pillow. Not for himself, but for the children waiting at home, unaware that their world had just shattered. The first night in the hospital was the longest of his life. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the beeping machines, feeling useless, broken. He had always believed that as long as he could stand, as long as he could work, his children would survive. Now, even standing felt like a distant dream. 3 days passed before the children were allowed to visit. Ayan walked in first, trying to be brave, holding his sister's hands. When he saw his father lying weak and pale, tubes attached to his body, his lips trembled. Abba, he whispered. Abdul Rahman forced a smile. Come here, my lion. Ayan ran to him and hugged him carefully, tears soaking the hospital sheets. Hira and Zoya followed, crying quietly, confused and scared. Abba, when will you come home? Zoya asked innocently. Soon, he wanted to say. But he couldn't lie. Very soon, inshallah, he replied softly. Inside, his heart was breaking into pieces. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Abdul Rahman returned home, but not as the same man. Crutches replaced his strong legs. Pain became his constant companion. Every step felt like punishment. Medical bills piled up. Neighbors helped when they could, but charity has limits, and pride has weight. He could no longer work. The children stopped going to school because fees were unpaid. Sometimes there was food, sometimes there wasn't. Ayan began collecting scrap from the streets, despite his father's protests. No, my son, Abdul Rahman said one evening, his voice shaking. Your job is to study, not suffer like me. But Abba, Ayan replied, tears in his eyes, I can't watch my sisters sleep hungry. That night, Abdul Rahman cried like he never had before. 3 years passed. 3 years of pain, humiliation, and silent prayers. His leg never healed properly. He could stand, but not walk far. The stitches were gone, but the scars remained, 32 marks etched into his flesh like reminders of fate's cruelty. Yet Abdul Rahman did not lose his faith. Every night, he prayed. Every morning, he tried again. He taught his children honesty, patience, and hope, even when hope felt like a stranger. The children grew older too, wiser beyond their years, shaped by hardship, bound by love. And though the world had broken Abdul Rahman's body, it had failed to break his soul. Because a father's sacrifice does not end with strength, it begins with endurance. And this was only the beginning. Morning no longer arrived with hope in Abdul Rahman's house. It came with silence, heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the distant sounds of traffic and the occasional cough from his damaged chest. The sun entered the room through a cracked window, falling upon walls that once held laughter and dreams, now holding only shadows of what used to be. Abdul Rahman lay awake before the children stirred. Sleep rarely visited him anymore. Pain in his leg pulsed like a reminder that life had moved forward without him. 3 years had passed since the accident, yet every morning felt like the first day of loss. He slowly sat up, his hands gripping the edge of the bed. His right leg responded late, stiff and aching. The scars had healed on the surface, but beneath the skin lived damage that doctors could not undo. 32 stitches had closed the wound, but they had opened a lifetime of struggle. From the corner of the room, he watched his children sleep. Ayan no longer slept like a child. His brows were often furrowed even in dreams, as if worry had permanently settled inside him. At 13, his shoulders carried burdens meant for a grown man. Hira, now 10, slept lightly, waking at the smallest noise. Zoya, the youngest, still clung to innocence, but hunger had begun stealing weight from her fragile body. Abdul Rahman's chest tightened. I failed you, he whispered silently, though he knew it wasn't true. That morning, there was no breakfast. The flour jar was empty. The tea leaves were gone. Even salt had run out. Abdul Rahman pretended not to notice as the children woke up. Abba, are you not feeling well? Hira asked softly. I'm fine, my daughter, he replied with a weak smile. Why don't you all wash your faces? I'll make something. He waited until they turned away before lowering his head in shame. What would he make from nothing? Ayan noticed. He always noticed. Abba, he said quietly, I will go out today. Abdul Rahman's heart skipped. Where? To work, Ayan replied, avoiding his father's eyes. There's a shop near the market. The owner needs help unloading goods. No, Abdul Rahman said firmly, gripping his crutch. You will not go. Then what should we eat? Ayan asked, his voice breaking. Hope. The word pierced Abdul Rahman deeper than any knife. Silence filled the room. Finally, Abdul Rahman nodded, not in permission, but in defeat. Only for today, he said. And you will come back before sunset. Ayan nodded quickly and left before his father could change his mind. Abdul Rahman watched the door close and felt something inside him collapse. The world outside was not kind to children like Ayan. He worked under the sun, carrying sacks heavier than his body, his hands blistered, his back aching. Shopkeepers shouted. Customers ignored him. By afternoon, hunger had dulled his senses, but he kept going, thinking of his sisters' faces. When the shop owner finally handed him a few crumpled notes, Ayan's hands trembled, not from weakness but from humiliation. This is all? He asked softly. Be grateful, the man replied. You're lucky I gave you anything. Ion said nothing. On the way home, he bought flour, lentils, and a small packet of milk. Nothing more. He wanted to buy sweets for Zoya, but the money wasn't enough. That night, the family ate after 2 days. Abdul Rahman watched his children eat slowly, carefully, as if afraid the food might disappear. Eat properly, he said, forcing cheer into his voice. Abba, Zoya said suddenly, when I grow up, I will buy you a new leg. The room fell silent. Abdul Rahman turned his face away so they wouldn't see his tears. The neighbors whispered. Poor man, some said. Useless now, others muttered. A few offered help, but only once, maybe twice. Sympathy fades. When suffering becomes permanent. Abdul Rahman tried everything he could. He attempted stitching clothes, but his hands shook. He tried selling small items from home, but customers preferred shops. Every failure added weight to his already broken spirit. One afternoon, he went to a nearby mosque, leaning heavily on his crutch. He sat in a corner, watching people pray, their lives full, their bodies whole. Ya Allah, he whispered, his voice cracking, I am not asking for ease. Just don't let my children break. Hira stopped asking for school. She started helping neighbors wash dishes for food. Zoya learned to stay quiet when hungry. Childhood slipped away from them like sand through fingers. One evening, Abdul Rahman overheard Hira telling Zoya a lie. Abba eats later because he likes to fast, she said. Abdul Rahman felt his heart tear open. That night, after the children slept, he dragged himself to the floor and cried, silently, so silently that even the walls could not hear him. I would give my life, he whispered, if it meant they could live with dignity. 3 years had taken everything from him, his strength, his pride, his place in society. But they had not taken his love. Every scar on his leg became a promise. Every tear became a prayer. Every hardship became a lesson his children would carry forever. And though the world had turned its back on them, something unseen was watching, counting every sacrifice, every silent struggle. Because some hearts are tested not to be broken, but to be purified. And somewhere beyond this darkness, a door was preparing to open.